Class is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Citrix XenServer Master Class. We're going to get started in about 2 minutes. Thank you. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to the February XenServer Master Class. My name is Valerie DiMartino, and I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager on the Networking, Cloud, and Service Provider product team. This session will be approximately 1 hour long. It is being recorded, and you will receive the recording and the slides in a follow-up email. Please do stay on till the end of the call for a chance to win a $50 Amazon gift card, as long as you're not a Citrix employee or you did not attend the earlier session of the masterclass today. Sorry. The audio for this webinar is available over VoIP or telephone in the audio section of your GoToWebinar control panel. Please also ask your questions at any time during the presentation in the questions section of the GoToWebinar panel. We have several experts on hand to answer them as they come in. Today's speakers are Marc Trouard-Riolle, who is the Senior Product Marketing Manager with Citrix XenServer, Enzo Raso, who's Senior Product Manager for Citrix XenServer, and Andrew Halley, who's Director of Product Development for Citrix XenServer. Please do tweet about this session at the following handles: @Citrix, @Citrix XenServer, and @XenServer. Today's agenda is as follows. We'll have an overview, followed by a XenServer 6.5 packaging and licensing information, then followed by what's new in XenServer 6.5, in-memory cache, workload balancing reports, and login VSI, as well as scalability and vGPU demos, XenCenter view and configuration and a vGPU demo, and a quiz and prize giveaway. So now I'm going to hand it over to Marc to give us an overview of Citrix XenServer. Marc, you have control.
Thank you, Valerie. Thank you, Valerie, and welcome everyone to this masterclass session. As Valerie mentioned, please do feel free to tweet, and you can see my Twitter handles there of @XenServer or my personal @Trouard-Riolle. Please feel free to tweet stuff around what you're hearing here. It's all publicly available in the public domain space. So, a quick overview of XenServer. Let's just tweet that. Getting quite a bit of a lag here, unfortunately. So, a session summary. So, it's the key things that I really hope you get out of this session today is really about where XenServer plays in the market. The fact that it is this very highly performing, scalable infrastructure, and we sort of tailor it and optimize it for the sort of server, desktop, and cloud workloads. And you'll see a particular emphasis on this today around the sort of desktop and server type workloads. We offer sort of market-leading features, and you'll see some of that around what we're doing in the sort of vGPU space. And it's something that's very much a sort of customer-proven architecture, with many sort of customers deploying this across these different spaces. We have many cloud customers running this for sort of hosting public clouds, through to Citrix customers of XenApp and XenDesktop using this to underpin their application and desktop virtualization, as well as customers in the server virtualization space running their business and their business workloads on XenServer. And you'll also get from this session, really how Citrix is trying to optimize XenServer to provide the best value for this sort of low-cost sort of desktop. You're really trying to improve the overall total cost of ownership of that sort of desktop and application virtualization. Just very briefly on leveraging multiple hypervisors. This is a slide from Infotech Research, and it really just goes to highlight how they're seeing, and we see the same from other analyst firms as well, the fact that many customers now are looking to deploy more than one hypervisor. We can see from this top pie chart here that 42% of all the customers are using more than one hypervisor within our infrastructure. And that may well be to create single vendor stacks for certain scenarios, like I've already said, maybe looking to use XenApp or XenDesktop on XenServer, so it's that single vendor stack there. It may be that they want to run multiple tiered hypervisors within their infrastructure. So you might have a top tier of business critical systems using one hypervisor type, and then a second tier hypervisor for sort of more dev test, general purpose workloads, etc. So there's different scenarios there. You can see that Citrix, according to this research, has 7% as the primary vendor, and then looking at 41% here on this pie chart for a combination of VMware and Citrix hypervisors. So a very brief overview of just the architectural components that you're going to hear about today. XenServer has been around for quite a few years now, and that includes what we term the Xen hypervisor. So XenServer includes Xen. Xen is an open source project based on the Xen project, and that is the very thin layer that is your hypervisor, or for want of a better phrase, a scheduler. It takes all the running workloads that run above it and schedules those on that piece of hardware. Now, when we sort of scale that up, what XenServer contains is not just the Xen hypervisor, but also a control domain, and this is what handles all aspects of the host in terms of I/O, storage I/O, network I/O, that is, manages the running guests on the host, and also interacts with other hosts within your infrastructure to collate them into resource pools and things like that. We have different types of guests, Linux guests and Windows guests. Linux are often termed as paravirtualized from the perspective that their kernels are paravirtualized, or the fact that they understand that they're being virtualized and they know how to play friendly with other workloads running on that same host. All I/O for Linux and Windows guests are paravirtualized, but Windows guests also make use of the Intel VT or AMD V chipset extensions to just handle how they operate from a sort of CPU perspective. They're not so paravirtualized aware that they are being virtualized on the host. So why do customers virtualize with XenServer? Well, ease of use is a key one. It's a very simple product to stand up and get up and running. We used to quite commonly use the phrase 10 to Xen. It really does take just a few minutes to get XenServer installed, up and running, and configured. There are no single points of failure with it, so it's very easy to sort of configure infrastructures that can cater for business critical workloads so that you are protected against failures in the hardware layer and things like that. And we have customers that literally manage thousands and thousands of servers, and I'm talking about host servers as well as the virtual servers in their environment. From a performance perspective, you're going to hear a lot of that, so I won't dwell on that too much. But yeah, we've got a lot of different features for the sort of live migration of workloads, to monitoring and management, to high availability and high graphics intensive capabilities within the products. You'll hear all about these as we go through the presentation. From an affordability perspective, As I mentioned at the beginning, XenServer really is trying to optimize the product so that Citrix customers of our sort of desktop and applications products really do get a great TCO for those projects. We have high consolidation ratios that really help with the CapEx and OpEx savings that you can make for even like a server virtualization scenario, for example. Per CPU socket pricing is the way we've gone. And you'll see this as we look at some of the packaging pricing in a second. The NetScaler SDX, if you're not familiar with it, is a physical network appliance that Citrix sells. It comes in 3 flavors, the SDX, MPX, and VPX. But the SDX is a particular flavor that's a hardware appliance that has XenServer baked in on it, and enables you to run multiple instances of the NetScaler workload on it. It offers, as you can see there, complete tenant isolation, and it's very much optimized for high network bandwidth and very low latency network connections. As you would expect with any networking appliance, it has to be able to cater for that low latent, high bandwidth capability. And we achieve that with XenServer as the hypervisor baked in onto that appliance. So a brief look at the licensing and packaging. There's 2 key editions of XenServer, Standard Edition and Enterprise Edition. This is a marked change from what we had in XenServer 6.2, which was essentially a free hypervisor product that you paid for support. If you had that, then that is now the equivalent of what we term XenServer Enterprise Edition, except we've also added functionality into that XenServer Enterprise Edition. So there's more features in there now. With the Enterprise Edition, it's still per CPU socket, and it's the same price as you would have been paying. That's the list price is obviously listed there. It's the same price as you would have paid with the XenServer 6.2 support. From a XenApp and XenDesktop entitlement perspective, if you make use of XenApp and XenDesktop, you get XenServer thrown in with that. One key difference here that we've had from previous editions is that previously it was just XenDesktop that had entitlements to XenServer usage. With this release of XenServer, we're also including that for XenApp. So XenApp and XenDesktop are sort of equal now in terms of what they're able to get by way of entitlements. There is still a free edition of XenServer available via xenserver.org, and you can look to upgrade that from the free edition of XenServer, pay for support, and you can get the Enterprise Edition there of XenServer. Now that's quite visible here on this slide. If you take as well the Standard Edition, there's an upgrade license to take it to Enterprise Edition. And that's basically what we're saying here with the standard Citrix commercial support to xenserver.org, taking that open source hypervisor and being able to upgrade it here to get the full support with the Enterprise Edition feature set as well. Now there is some license conversions. If you were running on an older version of XenServer, version 6.2 was already on a per CPU socket basis, but prior to that on 6.1 and older, they were per server or per host based licensing. So if you're looking to upgrade from one of those editions to the latest XenServer 6.5, you can do that, and there is a license conversion on offer. You can actually get access to this license conversion tool through the Citrix My Account tool online. And that's on a 2 CPU socket licenses for every one of your per server licenses that you had before. And that'll take you from the edition you had previously to the XenServer Enterprise Edition of today. Now, lastly, I just want to talk about the feature matrix. All of this is available online. I won't go through this feature matrix because you're going to hear about many of these features from my colleagues later on in the session. I just want to highlight again that there are the 2 editions, Standard and Enterprise, and some entitlements. All the editions of XenApp and XenDesktop have features to, or access to many of the features within XenServer. It's the Platinum editions of each of those have access to a few extra features, such as like the in-memory read cache that you'll hear about later. Do take a look at this link here, the XenServer 6.5 licensing FAQ, and that's available on the citrix.com support website. So with that, I'll hand back to yourself, Valerie.
Great, thanks, Mark. Okay, now we're going to switch over to Enzo to get a more in-depth look at Citrix XenServer 6.5. Enzo?
Yes, I'm here. Hopefully, you can all hear me. So, thank you very much, Valerie, for the opportunity to come and talk here about XenServer 6.5. So I'm Enzo Raso. I am the product manager for Citrix XenServer. This is really the culmination of a extraordinarily hard amount of work that a lot of individuals have put into this product. So I'm delighted today to be able to talk about what it is that we've achieved. Along the way to our achievement, we have actually undertaken the largest ever beta program that we've ever done with XenServer on here. So I'm hoping that all of the people who are on this webinar will see the benefits here. And I see that we have a very significant number of people, so thank you very much for attending, and I hope you enjoy it. So I think, first of all, before we get into the detail of things, let's just have a quick visit back to some of the things that you may or may not know about XenServer. So I think Mark already alluded to the fact that we are the SDX piece. NetScalers are very, very pervasive in all of our lives. In fact, 75% of you will touch a NetScaler in your day-to-day activities, either at work or as you browse the web. That's how pervasive NetScalers are. And the fact that we are pivotal in that SDX space, I think, is a testimony to the performance that you can get out of a XenServer environment. Now, as well as that, we do power 40% of all Xen desktop deployments are on XenServer. 60% of all cloud platform deployments are on XenServer as well. We're deployed on a very significant number of hosts with the availability of a free version. I can't give you an exact number of hosts, but it's going to be well north of the 750,000 mark now. We do run some of the world's largest clouds, both public and private clouds. And I don't know if any of you had the opportunity to either attend Summit or to have a look at some of the Summit keynotes there, but there was a lot of buzz around XenServer. Mark Templeton, our CEO and president, actually mentioned XenServer several times in his addresses there, and we know from discussions with Mark and with his executive team that XenServer really is seen as fundamental to the company's longer-term goal of enabling work and play from anywhere with any device. The detail here, I just wanted to take a very quick trip down the evolution of XenServer over the years. At the point prior to the introduction of Clearwater, which was XenServer 6.2, a lot of customers were telling me, hey, Enzo, we really like XenServer, but we just can't run enough load on your systems. We can't get the economies of scale that we need in order to maximize the value that we get from the product. When we released 6.2, we addressed that. You can now run 500 Windows VMs, 650 Linux VMs, and I don't have any customers come to me anymore and say, hey, we can't get enough scale out of your product. Later that year, we released support for vGPU. In fact, it's probably more than released support for vGPU. We created the market for vGPU. So through the engineering efforts of ourselves and our NVIDIA partners, we've developed this graphically accelerated solution that really transforms the user experience of people using VDIs. And I can tell you from discussions that I've had, as soon as a customer has had exposure to a vGPU-equipped desktop, there's no going back. It's very, very hard to then take that away from them. And vGPU is now becoming table stakes. It's not just the exotic domain of CAD designers. It's for anybody who wants to do anything, whether it be in HTML5 or spin a Google Globe or do any form of 3D-based activity. With the release that came out just earlier in January, the Credence release 6.5, we've moved to a 64-bit architecture, and we've unlocked further vGPU scale and very significant performance gains both in the networking and in storage domains. So I think we should just touch on what is it that has actually moved to be 64-bit because the hardware has been 64-bit for probably over a decade now. Many of you, in fact, may have mobile phones that are even 64-bit. Xen has been 64-bit for many years as well, as has the ability for us to actually support 64-bit VMs running on XenServer. The bit that's changed is that DOM0 management domain, which was previously 32-bit, but now the kernel, the user space, and the ZAPI are all now 64-bit. Now this is really great for us, it's great for our customers, and basically we were at the point where we had customers who were looking to put in significant numbers of network cards or wanting to run significant numbers of GPU cards, and because of the 4 GB memory restrictions that we had within the 32-bit environment, we were finding it increasingly difficult to satisfy the requirements of the sort of most demanding of our customers. And in fact, partners such as HP, who are releasing sort of Gen 9 hardware now, won't even boot from a 32-bit OS. So all of this was a sort of compelling event for us. We've delivered a 64-bit platform off the back of it. And some of the benefits I'm going to be here to discuss with you today. Not the least being that we can now scale the vGPU offering that we have, continuing our thought leadership in GPU technologies, and now are able to support 50% more vGPUs per host than we were previously with the 6.2 release. Now, that's not the end of the story, that's just the beginning. We will continue to scale as hardware continues to evolve, as server vendors produce hardware with more and more available PCI slots, as card manufacturers produce GPU cards populated with more and more GPUs on them. Will continue to grow and to increase that envelope. Now, we've made some very significant performance improvements. I know that my colleague Andy, who's coming up next, is going to give you some detail as to how we've achieved it. Now, there are a lot of different areas where we've made the significant progress here. I'm just going to focus in on a few of them. I think I've got three areas which are dear to my heart and dear to many of our customers' hearts. So I think perhaps most importantly, the aggregate network throughput that we're able to get from moving data from one host to another has had a massive increase in throughput on here. Customers were telling me prior to the release of this version that they'd made investments in 10 gig NICs. They weren't able to realize the benefits from their investment that they've made, and that made all of us sort of look up and pay attention and say, look, we need to do something about that. So we've done something about that, and now customers can happily run their 10 gig NICs teamed and know that they will be able to saturate the cards, get the maximum benefit from the investment that they've made within those cards. So I'm absolutely delighted that we've been able to achieve that. And as I say, Andy will be revealing details as to exactly what engineering took place in order to achieve that. Another area which has also seen significant benefit from the improvements that we've been able to make are for latency with regard to network flows. So I think the easiest example here for me to cite are those customers who've been running perhaps web servers on here, and previously the time to establish network connections and to then break those network connections and to do that multiple times with the hundreds of clients that you be servicing from a web server, that really was very poor on here. I'll be the first to admit that. So we've radically overhauled that capability now, and coming in at sort of 50 milliseconds latency is a tremendous improvement from the previous position that we were at. So I know a lot of customers will be very keen to experience this benefit now. Now, obviously, if we talk about network performance, the yin to the yang of that will be storage. We've had significant improvements in both write storage and also in read throughput, specifically in the aggregate case. Again, XenServer is typically used as a heavy lifting machine rather than a super fast race car. So we're often talking about aggregate loads on here. So nearly 5 times faster in terms of the storage read throughput that we're able to achieve. Now, when we look at how does all of this come together, the fact that we've moved to a 64-bit environment, the fact that we have this much faster data path allowing us to move data around more quickly, the real culmination of this is in the in-memory read caching feature that we've introduced. So the essence of this is all about trying to improve the experience for our customers who are using VDIs. So the typical scenario that you've got in a virtual desktop infrastructure setup is that come 9 a.m. on a morning, or perhaps 8 a.m. in many parts of the US, up comes the first user and wants to log on to their system. So they commence the process of retrieving their boot image from the back-end storage array, and things are progressing. But the problem is that 500 other people are doing exactly the same at exactly the same time. So really, this is a very effective denial of service attack on that back-end array. Now, with the move to a 64-bit DOM0, memory ceases to be such a precious commodity. You're no longer looking at taking something from a 4 gig maximum. Now we have plenty of memory to utilize here. So we've taken some of that memory and we've put it into a form of a cache, such that the very first request that comes in from a Windows VM is still read from that back-end array, but populates the cache, so that subsequent requests that come in from other Windows VMs, and this is the use case where you have really a gold image, which is typical of the non-persistent desktop use case, where you have a gold master image and effectively all the images are the same. So why would you want to continue to read something that is identical when you can just read it once, which is what we're now able to do. So utilizing the RAM that we have, it also plays nice with the existing IntelliCache feature here, so that you can benefit from having the smaller cache for the hot data, but a broader cache for made up of SSDs or spinning disks for the sort of larger amounts of data that you would wish to cache. So as I say, this is a great feature. It's available for all file-based SRs, so that really means on NFS, on ext3, and is there really for read-only data. So the maximum benefit that we see is in the Zen desktop use case using gold master images. Now, those of you who are super quick off the mark and are following me already on Twitter will have noticed that we have released a revised Zen Center. So that's something that I will be commenting on within this. But the Zen Center that we've developed, it's not tied to XenServer, so we're able to actually issue revised Zen Center deliverables out of band, so that it's not actually something that has to just ship with XenServer. We've made some very significant improvements within Zen Center this time round. First of all, we've got a much easier navigation paradigm on here. You can go to a single location where you can know that you can find all of the detail that you want to, that used to be formerly in a series of drop-down menus. Instead, you can go to this centralized place. Equally, if you want to perform searches, we've greatly improved the workflow for the creation and modification of complex search queries. So that's again a one-stop shop for that. We have a centralized notification area now for alerts and for events and for updates. So again, a single pane view where you can not only see what the issue is, but you can actually take remediation directly from within this view. There are many substantial other sort of benefits to Zen Center, which I'm going to allow you to discover in your own time as you experiment with Zen Center. One other thing to mention, though, particularly in conjunction with vGPU discussed, is one of the first things that you have to do to really get the maximum benefit out of a vGPU-equipped VM is to go and increase the number of vCPUs. Formerly, that had to be done via a command line command, and now we can actually do that from within the GUI, which is great news. And I think before we just move off from XenCenter, as I indicated in my tweet here, you can always use the latest version of XenCenter with any supported XenServer release. So even if you have no intention of moving off from the 6.1 or 6.2 or 6.02 versions of XenServer that you're using, you can benefit from the enhanced usability that we've got within the product simply by upgrading your XenCenter. Okay, I'm going to pick up the pace now so that you do actually get to see some real demos coming up. Workload balancing is back. We retired it within 6.2. We had a lot of people, a lot of customers saying, hey, look, we really missed this feature. Can you bring it back? We've brought it back. In case you've never used workload balancing before, it's a fantastic service that we have. You can use it in a multitude of different ways. The entry-level way of using it is just to allow it to generate some monitoring reports for you, which you can use for potentially chargeback or showback, or just to get some insight as to how your environment is performing. Perhaps use it for capacity planning moving forwards. Obviously, it also provides detail to administrators who can spot the buildup of hotspots and take some remedial action before the problem actually manifests itself. Or you can go the whole hog and allow it to automatically and dynamically move around your VMs based on what the load on CPU is, storage is, or network. We have a complete set of guest OSs on here, some of which we're actually supporting in PV on HVM mode, which is a topical unto itself, so I'm not going to go into detail on that. We were tracking the support for Windows 9, which morphed into 10. That hasn't made it in time for this release, but we'll obviously be addressing that as and when Windows 10 ships. This is an LTS they're introducing now, which means that we will support you if you do a yum update for a minor version upgrade from one of the guest operating systems, and then we will, at a later period, provide hotfixes to allow installation straight from new release media. So I know a lot of customers have been asking for this, particularly in the cloud space, so I'm very happy to deliver that now. It does come with a couple of gotchas. It's not a fully fledged LTS policy where you can sort of get support for the latest hardware throughout the lifetime of the product, so that's not something that we'll be delivering. And you will have to consume hotfixes and service packs as they appear, sort of to stay at the fresh end of the product, as opposed to just sort of sitting on the released version and expecting to be able to consume all new guests. There are numerous other features. I'm just going to do a very quick fly past, but I know I'm eating into Andy's time now. We have implemented support for unmap, which basically means that if you delete a VDI from your XenServer, that deletion can now be communicated to the backend array, so that the backend array can actually free up the space and make it available to other consumers of that storage on here. We also now support online dynamic LUN resizing, which means that you no longer have to take down the VMs that had visibility of that LUN. You can just increase the size of the LUN, go into your beloved XenCenter and realize the additional sizing that you've got. We've made significant improvements in the maintenance space, essentially to try and avoid the scenario of regression, which everybody hates when you fix something and then it breaks again, which doesn't make you popular with anyone on here. So now the manner in which we're issuing the drivers, it's going to check to see whether the version that it's about to write over is actually newer than the version it's got within its payload. Also, the number of reboots required is going to be significantly reduced. Almost at the end. Converged infrastructure, those of you who looked at what was announced at Summit will probably have spotted that Atlantis and Citrix announced support for USX. So this is a hyper-converged infrastructure offering for Xen Desktop, delivering compression and dedupe. Not only that, we then had the EMC Scale I/O offering, which allows you to effectively mix and match storage from a whole host of different hypervisors and expose them within XenServer. And finally, but not least, also very happy to announce that Citrix acquired Sanbolic. Now, whilst I'm not able to make any forward-looking statements on this webinar, if I look in my crystal ball, the fact that we've acquired this company, I think it's a fair bet that we'll be providing support for Sanbolic in the not too distant future. So that's almost me done. There's one other thing I just wanted to touch on here, and that is that some of you may have been concerned when we released 6.2 that we indicated that the DVSC was actually going to be deprecated. Deprecated is a very long word. That meant that we might at some stage in the future retire support for the DVSC. I can tell you now that that is not going to happen on the 6.2 product, nor on the 6.5 product that we've released. You will be able to use the DVSC for the lifetime of the product on both of those counts. So if there are any questions on that, then please do ask. But full support for the DVSC, and in fact, XenCenter now will not sort of nag you and tell you that you're using a feature that is actually not fully supported. So I think with that, thank you very much for your attention. The best bit is yet to come as we move on to Andy. So if I can please hand back control now.
Thank you, Enzo. Okay, we're going to do a really quick poll before we have Andy show us some demos. So I'm going to launch it right now. If you could reply as quickly as you can to one of the answers to what is the primary hypervisor you use? Is it XenServer, VMware vSphere, Microsoft Hyper-V, Rev, or you have not yet virtualized? Great, we have almost 60% voted. Just a few more seconds. Okay, I'm just going to share the results with you here really quick. And this is similar to what we saw in our earlier masterclass session today. Okay, Andy, let me give you control so you can go ahead and get started.
Thank you
All right.
very much indeed. Hello, everybody. My name is Andrew Halley, and I work for the XenServer development team. We've got teams around the world. They're all working hard to kind of give you a better product every time. So what I'm going to talk about today is about scaling higher and working faster with XenServer 6.5. This will be a kind of a collection of some technical examples and explanations and some demonstrations as well. So what I'm going to be talking a lot about is looking underneath the hood of some of the things that Mark and Enzo have already kind of talked to you about. So we've talked about performance, we've talked about scalability. I want to dive into a little bit more detail of what that means for you and for the end users. So I'll be talking a little bit about how and why we did those storage improvements and how that actually follows through into actually making real-life problems like boot storms better and easier for your users. And also talking about how we can actually go up to scale, but also how you can use the tools inside XenServer to help you manage your users at scale. And then while we're all talking about scale, we'll be talking about VM density, a little bit about vGPU density and performance, and then again using some of those kind of extended features of XenCenter to manage it all. So this is going to be a fairly quick tour, so just bear with me and feel free to ask lots of questions to the chat panel. So this is on a one slide, a quick summary of all of the highlights of the performance improvements that we've put in to XenServer 6.5. So taking you down, we're going to talk about vGPU scalability, where we've really improved that. You can cram more into your box. We've managed to drastically reduce boot storm durations, especially when you've got duplicate images like in a Xen desktop or a Xen app deployment. During those boot storms, you then also have got far less data to pump around your system because we've optimized the way in which it flows. We've then worked hard on some of the things that Enzo mentioned on aggregate network throughput, storage throughput for read and writes, using some of the state-of-the-art storage arrays like SSDs, etc. So these are all big improvements in here, but how and why have we done them? Well, the how of networking performance, one of the key parts of that was to actually exploit the feature of generic receive offload. So this is often called GRO, and in previous versions of XenServer, we managed to actually enable this only on a limited set of hardware, a limited set of NIC and CPU combinations because of delicacies in the code. I'm very happy to say in XenServer 6.5, we're now able to support that across the board on all of the hardware on the HCL, and that gives a kind of a 200% increase in the VM receive performance as it stands. In addition, we went right down the bottom of the stack. the place where the data is flowing through the system on the data path plane between the DOM-Us and the guest VMs and the DOM0, the control logic. And we actually optimized every place we could find where data was being copied inefficiently. So by doing that kind of open heart surgery at the bottom of the stack, you know the kind of benefits and the kind of leverage you get goes all the way up and magnifies itself to the top of the stack where you're using this code again and again every iteration. So that itself gave another 200% increase in aggregate throughput by actually minimizing the amount of DOM0 resources that you were having to use. And then to add on to that, in addition, we looked at the IPv stack and how we were actually interacting with our guests, and we improved that as well, given that the world's really largely switched to IPv6 at this point. The cool thing about all these improvements is they're largely additive, so that we can get all of that at once. We then looked at storage, and again, we started to think about the open heart surgery at the bottom of the stack to try and optimize things at this crucial interface. I'll go into this in a bit more detail on a better diagram on the next slide, but the idea is to optimize and minimize the amount of times you switch between kernel and user space as we're passing data all the way from the user over here, right the way down and up and down to the driver talking directly to the disk. And also to try to optimize the path between the guest over here on the right and the DOM0 control logic on the left. So the way we attacked that was we actually built in support for a new TapDisk 3 architecture, and we removed the old TapDisk 2 architecture. That alone managed to increase the read performance by about 100%. We then thought about, again, what are the big problems our customers face? We can give them scale, we can give them performance, but then, of course, you start loading up the systems more and more. And obviously, when you do that, something's got to give. And the situation that most of our customers were hitting more often than others was actually getting excited and carried away and running out of storage. And unfortunately, XenServer has got many different interactions of the code. And so we found that it was a good return on investment to look at all of the cases in our code that were handling the storage errors when you run out of space. So what we did is we went up and down the stack and instrumented all of the error handling, and we used a set of really nasty pathological test cases to constantly push our system so they crashed again and again and again, running out of storage in lots of different ways, and then instrumenting the code to actually capture all of those situations, build in better error reporting, build in better error handling, try fix-ups so that actually if you do run out of space, can we fix it before it gets all the way up to the user? So by doing that systematically through the code, we've made the code much more robust, which is very, very important for people like especially cloud users that use snapshots a lot, or people that use a lot of VDAs and want to expand rapidly for user demand. We then took that one step further and tried to instrument XenCenter with more detailed I/O error reporting, so that when you do have some hardware problems or you do start to see some network problems getting to your SAN, XenCenter actually makes them available to you so you can actually do something about it before the situation becomes critical. And then finally, we also increased the supported limit of the number of virtual disks you can actually attach into a given host. I'll cover the actual increase in configuration limits towards the end of this presentation, but I wanted to just deep dive into some of that open heart surgery to let you know the complexity of what we have to deal with at the bottom of the stack to make these things better. So in the old days of 6.2, so the last release, again, if you think of the right as being your guest and on the left as being the DOM0 control, then when you wanted to actually get data from your user space all the way to your actual disk, you had to do all of these jumps. And the things to notice is that there's several copies here and page tables that must pass the data back and forward, and also that there's at least this large area of interaction between user space and kernel space. By switching to XenServer 6.5 and TapDisk 3, the thing which you see is different here is that the interaction between user and kernel space now goes through shared memory and event channels. So this is a fast way to do it, a much faster way than previously. And the second thing to notice is also that we managed to actually remove, by using TapDisk 3, we managed to remove one complete set of extra data copying between the DOM0 and the guests. So these combination gives you that, of two big improvements, gives you that increase in network throughput. So what that means for you as an end user is that even with small DOM0 memory, you actually get very big impacts on your VM boots and your login times. So your users really feel it. You actually get that immediate access to their data and their applications. We're talking about factors of 2 and 3, 3 and 4 coming in terms of responsiveness and access to data. So again, this is great news for your users. But we're engineers, we're scientists. We love to take that, we love to turn it into numbers and then use that to make it even better next time. So what we do is we have adopted the login VSI benchmark that we use in our testing. And login VSI, for those of you that are not aware of it, is actually a great way of measuring not just how many VMs you have running on a given machine, but also how many of those VMs are actually giving acceptable level of user performance. So if I take that concept through to the next slide, this graph actually shows how we've managed to use these test cases to emulate real user behavior to actually improve the product year on year, release on release. So the idea of login VSI here on this graph is to show on this vertical axis, we've got the number of VMs that are started and are running well. And on the horizontal axis, we've got the number of VMs that are running. So that basically means the horizontal axis, you could theoretically keep increasing the number of VMs, but at some point you might find that the responsiveness drops because of the overheads of the system and just basically running out of resource. So what we're looking for is a kind of linear relationship in a perfect world. And when you drop off that linear relationship, that's when you know your hypervisor is actually affecting the overall number of VMs that you can run on that machine. So in previous releases, we managed to, you can see with XenServer 6.02 with the brown line here, we managed to get up to about 120 VMs before we started to get that. Not every VM that we were starting was a responsive, performant VM. 6.1, we're up at 165. XenServer 6.2, we got up to about 350. That's the kind of systems that most people are running right now, which is already a great number. But with XenServer 6.5, with all those changes I talked about on the previous slides, it's linear all the way right up to our theoretical limit of 500 VMs here. This is Windows 7 VMs running login VSI 3.5 medium workloads. So this is like an information worker running his email, his browser, running his corporate applications, etc. So this means that we're still going, even though other parts of the system cannot do any more than 500 VMs. Actually, these VMs are all good, performant ones that your users can actually use on a daily basis. So I'm just going to show you that for a second. Let me just switch over here to a system I prepared earlier. So if you go in here to look at this one here, this is a system which is exactly doing what I talked about. It's running 500 VMs simultaneously. As you can see, it gets quite a long page list in XenCenter. These are all Windows 7 VMs. They're all got around about a gig of memory, and they're all live and running. The server's been up for a while. As you can see, with the server, it's fully loaded. I think we've got very, very little amount of memory free, but the whole thing's up and running carefully. But as I say, I've just showed you that these should be good workloads. So if I go and log, just choose one randomly, and then go and log into it at the console. Let's see what we can see. Is this a real VM running? There we go. It is. Well, let me just log in here. So yep, it's a logging performant VM. It's running carefully here. Let's kick off a web browser or something. Let's do something just like a normal login VSI average user we would do. And it's connecting, and as you can see, it'll trundle into life as soon as it gets through this web page. Off it goes, and there you go. This is a normal VM running carefully inside a single server, along with 500 other VMs just like it, all are running on the same machine. So we're talking about real-life use cases that people can use on a daily basis. So then let's think about, okay, they're up and running, but what happens when I come in the morning and they all try to log in at the same time? Can I still get that level of performance very, very quickly? So this next graph shows you the VM starting up here. This goes all the way up to 500 again. And this is a kind of a responsiveness test as they're all booting. So as they're booting, we also look at the responsiveness in terms of pings and network response from a web browser or from an email client, for example. You can see in XenServer 6.2, we managed to get up to 375 VMs, which is a great density. But as it was actually booting, many of the people on the VMs that started earlier in the process, they would start to see occasional kind of latencies building up before everything was booted and then things would settle down. Whereas you can see with XenServer 6.5 down here, as you're adding on more and more VMs all the way up to that maximum of 500, the latency, the ping times to each of the VMs you've already started are actually the same, roughly the same. So that means that the first 50 users that come onto your system in the morning, as they're logging in, and then the next 450 start logging in, the first 50 don't see that. They don't get affected by it. So these are actually responsive VMs even during the boot storm. So let me just go to another quick demo here. This is on the left, you've got a little mini boot storm running here. I'm going to try and start 15 VMs. And on the right, and on the left is 6.2 as XenServer. And on the left, the right, sorry, we've got the new version of XenServer, and I'm going to start exactly the same thing. So both of these hosts are started simultaneously, and you'll start, sorry, both these hosts are started simultaneously, and you'll start to see the difference between XenServer 6.5 on the right and XenServer 6.2 on the left, where all those performance improvements, the read caching that Enzo talked about, are really demonstrating real value for the kind of users that you've got on a daily basis. So you'll see XenCenter went green faster on the right, but also the boot sequence for the second VM that was chosen as an example is also proceeding much faster on the right as well. So we're literally talking about factors of 2 and 3 in terms of performance improvements here. And you should start to see that on the right you'll get to the boot screen and straight into the applications for the Windows 7 VM, while actually on the left it's actually still booting and still trying to get going. Okay, so that's the power. What you're not seeing is going underneath the hood again is that the average boot time per VM stays very, very flat in XenServer 6.5. So again, as you're adding more users, user number 469 gets almost the same boot time as user 400 or user 350. And what, of course, especially with the recaching feature here on the right, you also mean that the amount of data that you're shuffling around your network and from your SAN is much, much lower because you're using the cache as much as possible. So what else have we done? Well, just to make things even better for DOM 0, we switched to just one netback thread running per virtual NIC interface going. So that means that it's actually the load is now spread more evenly across the DOM 0 CPUs. On top of that, we also upgraded to the latest Open vSwitch, which, as Enzo pointed out, gives you that much, much better handling, that 1,600% improvement in handling short-term flows, which is quite typical for many of your web applications these days. But we've also added on support for megaflows inside OVS, which allows you to have one wildcard which actually can cover a whole set of flows, which again reduces the number of user space, kernel space interactions inside OVS, and again boosts performance. We talked about boot storms, so we talked about how we can actually make them easier and more responsive while they're booting. We talked about keeping the login times the same, but what's the overall duration of a boot storm? I mean, how long does a sysadmin have to wait before his system's back up and running? So what we've done here is we've just booted 125 in this case on 6.2 and 6.5, and here you can see another interesting effect. Normally XenCenter starts 25 VMs simultaneously to do it in tranches, and you can see in the 6.2 version there's these parts of the system started to bottleneck and leads to these threshold jumps in the start time for the VMs, whereas in XenServer 6.5 those are also removed. So that means you get that 300% improvement in the total VM boot time. It happens smoothly, the users don't feel it, and each one of those VMs is much more performant than it has been before. So that's the kind of a quick summary slide in there. 500 VMs, 40% more than before, 3 times faster, with none of these steps, and you get that responsiveness all the time. So we've talked a lot about scaling in normal basics of virtualization. We've talked about scaling the usual CPU, memory, networking, storage. So let's jump back to graphics, because graphics, as Enzo pointed out, has become a new frontier. So I want to go underneath the hood of that and show you how that works. So there's several ways of doing it, depending on what type of user is actually needing the raw power of the GPU. Firstly, we started with XenApp GPU sharing, where you can actually take some of these enormously powerful GPU cards and give access to them via XenApp to about 100 sessions. 100 users can make use of them. But that's kind of limited generally to Office applications. Then we've made the possibility available originally on 8, but now on even more VMs per host, where you can actually get a whole GPU given to an exact a Xen desktop VM for a power user that can actually work with advanced materials, do 3D rotations, etc. In XenServer 6.2, we added the ability to do vGPU. So this is virtualizing the last frontier, adding it onto all of the other virtualization technologies we've got there. And now in 6.5, we're talking about increasing that density even more. So instead of chasing, in an attempt to chase up to 500 VMs, we're already now with vGPU up at 96, able to give 96 of those VMs a vGPU experience. So what kind of users are we talking about here? In terms of giving a whole GPU, this is a picture of an oil rig. This is designed by people who actually do this on a daily basis. They do fly-throughs, they do 3D rotations, they do slicing to try to make sure that when you build this baby, you build it right and there's no mistakes. But even for other users designing more kind of a consumer type devices, etc., then actually using vGPU is a very, very good alternative, especially for collaboration when you've got teams working in different sites across the world, wanting to share data, wanting to actually see what each other is working on and making sure that things all fit together. So in the background, it's much more GPU, but kind of a user scenario, but in the foreground, very much more a vGPU scenario. Mind you, these use cases are changing all the time. So as I say, we've increased the density. We've also increased, by going to 64-bit, the number of things you can put on the PCI bus and actually still be able to address it. So now you're able to completely fill up your chassis and max them out. Citrix XenServer is also now completely 64-bit in that sense, and so we're able to scale as new hardware becomes available. As you know, the market for GPUs is expanding rapidly, and we fully intend to keep up. We support all the new NVIDIA vGPU types, including all of the new cards. And you also get all of the underlying performance improvements we talked about on previous slides, also helping GPUs. So we're not just giving you more GPUs, faster GPUs, higher density GPUs. We're actually optimizing the architecture underneath it to make those GPUs run faster as well. So we do that this way. So I know it's a complicated diagram, but this is really quite exciting for people like me anyway. So this is how vGPU on XenServer is architected. At the bottom of the slide is a physical GPU. This is the Kepler core GPU. On the grid cards, there's actually multiple ones of these on each card. The NVIDIA driver, which is up here in the XenServer control domain, it's responsible for slicing that up. And that actually presents the hardware through to the guest here as a virtual device known via some device emulators. The NVIDIA driver inside the guest VM then communicates directly with the driver inside the DOM0. And that allows graphics to be presented both over the virtual terminal here, which we'll show you in a minute, but also directly through an ICA connection such as ADX, HDX, or the 3D Pro. The good thing about this is it allows DOM0 to spend most of its time when it's up and running and configured just keeping out of the way, just letting the data flow as fast as it can back and forward through the Kepler GPU back and forward to the actual guest domain. It means that this really minimizes the overhead here for XenServer on adding it into the system. But even that small overhead, we can optimize it. And so that's what we've done in 6.5. So the reason for showing you that diagram is that it's actually, you can see the kind of hardware coupling that we're doing there. It's very, very closely linked into the hardware. So it's actually much faster than a lot of these software-based models. It's also very good because it means that all of the kind of game of keeping up with OpenGL standards and DirectX standards is all taken away from you. You don't have to worry about it. That's all handled by the hardware and by the software inside NVIDIA. You don't have to worry about it from your hypervisor point of view. So I'd like you now to help me with the next demo. I'm going to send you a link on the communications window of the webinar. So if you could click on that YouTube link, it'll give you a faster version of the demo, which is coming up in a few minutes. Unfortunately, the demo is so fast with the graphics, it doesn't come across very well on the webinar. So I'm going to go back onto XenCenter for an instant here. And instead of, I'm going to shrink down that 500 VM host. I'm going to open up this one here, which is actually got 96 VMs running. And those of you who have been listening closely, you know that 96 is the magic number. So if I go here and I'll go over and look at the GPUs on that, as you can see, we've got 96 VMs running. We've still got a bit of memory left over in this host, because what we're actually maxing out here is actually the number of GPUs. So we've got 12 GPUs loaded onto the system here. I've made a choice here. I've made a conscious decision to use them all for maximum density. So I want to put as many VMs as possible onto the same GPU. So we've ended up with 8 per GPU. I've also decided not to use any of them for pass-through. So I've decided to use them all for actual vGPU. But again, these are all choices that you can make on a very simple daily basis, or just with a quick cycle, depending on what customers and users you've got. And you can see that they've now fully loaded these all up. You can then go into, again, I could choose any one of these. I could log in via the console. But I could also actually use the the feature and log into this with an ICA connection as well and get the graphics actually on the screen, the full power via my console as well because of that architecture. So now going back to the slides, we'll now go forward a little bit. Those of you that have actually clicked on the YouTube video should see this in much more smoothly than you'll get now on the webinar. The key thing to notice for those of you watching the webinar is the numbers you can see in the top part of left of the screen. So on the left-hand side, we've got the 6.2 version of vGPU running. So that was our Generation 2 graphics virtualization product that's currently in the market. With XenServer 6.5, using exactly the same hardware with exactly the same GPU card, so I'm not cheating here. This is exactly the same hardware on the left and right. The only thing that's different is that we've optimized the DOM0 by going to 64-bit, by making all those changes I talked to you about in terms of data path. You're already seeing a difference in frame rate from 44. You get 44 here and 33 here. So it's like a 30% speed improvement using the same hardware that you were using before because we've optimized that back-end architecture. So I realize we're taking a lot of time here, so I'm going to flick back to XenCentral one more go, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how to kind of manage your hosts. So let's go back to that 500 host machine. So that's a lot of VMs. Remember, for me, these VMs are all the same. They're all clones. But for many customers, cloud customers and server virtualization customers, each one of those VMs represents a customer of them, an end user, a very, very specific workload. And so managing that complexity can be quite a big, tough challenge. So what we've done is I've added inside here into the pool servers. Sorry, let me click on that. Inside the pool menu, you've now got export resource data. If you go there, it'll ask you to give an Excel spreadsheet title. And if you then do that, it'll then dump out all of the data that you need to know to manage your pools. So even for a big host like this, you end up with a very large spreadsheet. But it's got all the extra data that you need. It's got all of the UUIDs, the VDIs, the networking, tells you which servers you're running on. And of course, you can do this for all of your machines. Let me just get that right down the bottom. So then you can talk about your storage, the VMs. You can also go right into the graphics at the bottom, which will tell you who's using what GPUs, if you've got any on that host. So this is the kind of tool. This has got all the other columns here added on, adding in all of the uptimes and all of the data that you might need to know to manage your hosts. So this is something that I've seen several customers using, manually doing this themselves, but this is actually all now provided for you easily inside XenCentral. Now I'm just going to go back to the presentation. And just before I finish, I'm going to talk about the configuration limits. So this is a quick summary of the things that we've changed in XenServer 6.5. So you can now get up to 32 vCPUs per Linux VM. We've also increased the multipath LUNs per host, now running up at 256. So this is close to the theoretical limit for, or is the limit for fiber channel SRs. RAM per VM have increased, and also the VBDs per host we talked about earlier is now right up there at 2048. So that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour through XenServer. So I'd just like to quickly summarize. 6.5 not only gives you more vGPUs to VMs, it also makes them 10 to 30% faster. It depends on what benchmark you're using. But in general, XenServer 6.5 delivers more responsive system with more performant VMs delivered to your customers faster and also more smoothly as you're doing it, and your boot storms are much, much less. The reason that we do that, the reason that we've been able to do that is not just that we added features, is that we architecturally made it more powerful, and we built it for future expansion and growth, so that as more technology comes out in NICs, in SSDs, in graphics, this system will be able to scale with you. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much for listening, and I'd like to hand you now back over to Mark and Valerie.
Thanks, Andy. We're going to launch a very quick poll here again and then wrap it up, give you some resources, and do the contest. So what is your primary use case that led you to select XenServer? Is it server virtualization, desktop virtualization, cloud, dev and test, or other? Okay, like 5 more seconds, and I'm going to close it. Okay, and here quickly are the results. Okay, let me just take back control very quickly here. Okay, Mark, would you like to go ahead and take us through the summary and the
Hi.
resources?
Absolutely. Thank you, Valerie. And thank you to Enzo and Andy for that very comprehensive overview of what we're doing with XenServer 6.5. Hopefully everyone's now sort of understands when I spoke initially about what we're doing to really optimize XenServer to make it highly scalable and performant for server virtualization, desktop and cloud virtualization scenarios. You get a bit of a picture as to the work that's gone into this release of XenServer, what we've done to really optimize things like the networking and storage performance, the scalability of vGPU, and things like that. And some of these features, and particularly vGPU, is something that, whilst we've done this for the last year plus, a little over a year, we've had that functionality generally available. We are still today the only vendor that offers that functionality. And from a TCO perspective, for customers looking to deploy, be it server, cloud, or desktop virtualization, we really can offer sort of the best TCO for those sort of scenarios. Just to quickly go through some resources, you'll find a list here that you'll be able to get access to when you see the slides. It's just links to things like the release notes, configuration maximums, a XenServer FAQ, a licensing FAQ, etc. Particularly interesting are some of the case studies that we've been working on updating. So this shows really what sort of customers we have across the different scenarios, be it desktop, cloud, or server virtualization. So please do check those out. And do follow us on the social media, be it Facebook or Twitter. There's a couple of the Twitter handles down there again. So thank you very much, and I'll hand back to yourself, Valerie.
Okay, for the $50 giveaway, couple rules. Just put your answer, the first person to answer in the questions panel will get the prize. Please do not answer if you were on the earlier masterclass session today or if you're a Citrix employee. And here's the question. What feature of XenServer does reporting and monitoring? And I'm sure we already have an answer that I'm not, not yet looking at. Okay, we've got, I think, I have to scroll to the top here. Wow, a lot of you have answered. All right, I'm going to sort through this and find, I think it's Patrick, and make sure that the first person that answered got the answer, which was workload balancing. I'd like to thank you for staying on late and listening to our presenters. You will be getting the recording and the slides very shortly. Don't forget to follow us on social media. And please fill out the survey once this GoToWebinar closes. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day.